This chapter is called The Market Forces of Supply and Demand. In this chapter, look for the answers to the following questions. We're going to look at what factors affect buyers' demand for goods, what factors affect sellers' supply of goods, how do supply and demand determine the price of a good and the quantity sold, how do changes in the factors that affect demand or supply affect the market price and the quantity of a good? And finally, how do markets allocate resources? We define a market as a group of buyers and sellers of a particular good or service. Buyers as a group determine the demand for the product. Sellers as a group determine the supply of the product. A competitive market is defined as many buyers and many sellers. Each has a negligible impact on market price. A perfectly competitive market refers to a situation where all goods are exactly the same. Buyers and sellers are so numerous that no one can affect the market price. In other words, they're price takers. Quantity demanded refers to the amount of a good that buyers are willing and able to purchase. The law of demand says that other things equal, when the price of a good rises, the quantity demanded of the good falls. When the price falls, the quantity demanded rises. So we're going to look at a demand schedule for lattes. So in the individual here, we're just looking at one individual's name is Sam, and Sam's preferences obey the law of demand. So as you can see, the quantity of lattes that are demanded gets larger as the price gets lower. So if the latte is essentially free, Sam would consume 16 lattes. As the price goes up, at a price of $5, Sam would consume 6, and at a price of 6, Sam would consume 4. So this chart is graphed here on what we call the demand curve. Market demand refers to the sum of all individual demands for a good or service. The market demand curve refers to the sum the individual demand curves horizontally. So to find the total quantity demanded at any price, you add up all the individual quantities. So let's say that we're going to simplify here and suppose Sam and Dean are the only two buyers in the market for lattes. Of course, there's more buyers, but we're just going to look at 2 to see what the total market demand is. So even though Sam and Dean would consume different quantities of lattes at different prices, you see Sam would consume 16 if they were free, and Dean would only consume 8. So their individual price preferences are different. The final column over here gives us the market for quantity demanded. So the market demand curve is going to look a lot like the demand curve for Sam, the individual demand curve. It's also downward sloping. Demand curve shifters. So the demand curve shows how price affects the quantity demanded, other things being equal. These other things are referred to as non-price determinants of demand. So things that determine buyers' demand for a good other than the good's price. Those things will actually cause the demand curve to shift. the number of buyers. If you have an increase in the number of buyers, that would increase the quantity demanded at each price. The demand curve would shift to the right. If we have a decrease in the number of buyers, that would decrease the quantity demanded at each price, and the demand curve would shift to the left. So on this slide, you can see that as the number of buyers increases, the demand curve has shifted from its original position here to the right. Another thing that would result in a shift of demand is income. We look at two different types of goods, normal goods and inferior goods. Normal goods are goods that you're going to buy more of as your income goes up. Inferior goods are goods that you're going to actually buy less of as your income goes up. The price of related goods or substitutes. First of all, two goods are substitutes if an increase in the price of one leads to an increase in the demand for the other. So pizza and hamburgers, for example. If there's an increase in the price of pizza, this would increase the demand for hamburgers, shifting the hamburger demand curve to the right. Other examples might be Coke and Pepsi, laptops and tablets, music CDs, and music downloads. Another shifter of demand are price of related goods, and these are called complements. Two goods are complements if an increase in the price of one good leads to a decrease in the demand for other. So computers and software. If the price of computers goes up, people buy fewer computers and therefore less software. The software demand curve would shift to the left. Other examples, college tuition and textbooks, bagels and cream cheese, eggs and bacons, all goods that are considered complementary goods. Tastes. Anything that causes a shift in taste toward a good will increase the demand for that good and shift the demand curve to the right. So an example, the Atkins diet was very popular, and this caused an increase in the demand for eggs, which shifted the demand curve to the right. Expectations are another shifter of demand curves. If you expect an increase in income, that would result in an increase in current demand. If you expect higher prices, that would result in an increase in current demand. So an example, if you expect your incomes to rise, the demand for eating out at expensive restaurants may go up.